Hi, everybody. It's Jay, and I am back in the booth with you for another sneak peek. No. This week is not just another sneak peek video preview. It's a special sneak peek video preview. The reason it's special, this week's new release marks the 75th audiobook for Jessie Gussman and myself. So first, I'd like to say thanks to Jessie for putting up with me for 75 audiobooks, and I'd like to thank her in advance for the next 75. Now, that said, our new release this week is Just a Cowboy's Lifetime Love. It's the 11th book in Jessie Gussman's Flyboys of Sweet Briar Ranch Sweet Romance series. And as usual, I'll have more about the story and a live preview reading for you in just a bit. But as you are most likely aware by now, Jessie has been including recipes in her books in this series, and I've been making them for you here. We're going to do that again today in a segment we like to call Cooking with Jay. This week's recipe is actually a twofer, and on top of that, we're going international. We're making, first, Vietnamese lemon chicken. It's a fantastic chicken dish all on its own, but what really sends it into orbit is the second part of our segment today, and that's the dipping sauce that goes with it. It's called Nuoc Cham. Now, yes, this is how you spell it. No, it's not a typo. It's pronounced Nuoc Cham from everything I've been able to find. And I've also been saying this wrong for years that I've been making it. But let's move on. Now, as always, don't worry about trying to copy down the ingredients and the amounts. I'll have them listed in the description down below for you. But let's get started making our Vietnamese lemon chicken with Nuoc Cham dipping sauce. So let's take a look at our ingredients, and these are the ingredients for both parts of the recipe. For the Vietnamese lemon chicken, you're going to need 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. You're going to need 4 teaspoons of lemon juice, 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, 4 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of fish sauce, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and not shown here, you're going to need a couple of tablespoons of oil to cook the chicken in. For the Nuoc Cham, you're going to need 3 tablespoons of the fish sauce. You're going to need 3 tablespoons of lime juice, 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, 1 teaspoon of chili garlic paste, and 1/4 cup of water. Now, just a couple of extra notes here about the ingredients. The fish sauce is probably going to be the most unfamiliar ingredient, but you can find that typically in the Asian food section of your grocery stores, hopefully. Secondly, the rice vinegar is a bit more common, but you might not have any. You can substitute white vinegar, but trust me, it is worth it to pick up some rice vinegar. It is a wonderful, mellow, and flavorful vinegar that's not quite as biting as white vinegar is. And you'll find you use that in lots of other things. It's great in salad dressings and things like that. Lastly, the chili garlic paste can be a little tough to find sometimes. There are also lots of different varieties of this in your grocery store, different brands and so forth, and they've got different levels of heat. So when we're making our sauce, if you're not familiar with the variety that you have, use it sparingly. I would start adding maybe half of what the recipe calls for, taste it, and then add more until you get it to the heat level that you like. It's not meant to be a burning hot dipping sauce. You just want a little flavor to it. So now, let's get started. The first thing you're going to do is one of my favorite things to do in cooking, and that's beat stuff with a hammer. take your chicken breasts, put them in a large Ziploc bag, then using a meat mallet or actually, anything heavy will do. But you want to pound the chicken out until it's about a ½ inch thick. This is so that it'll cook evenly and quickly, plus it has the added benefit of tenderizing the meat. Once you've got your chicken breasts pounded out flat, put them in the Ziploc bag or in another Ziploc bag if you think there's any chance that you might have punctured this one, and set it aside for just a moment. Next, we're going to mix up a marinade for the chicken. So, in a mixing bowl or mixing cup, add our other ingredients. We're going to add our lemon juice, our minced garlic, our sugar and our pepper, and our fish sauce. Stir that up really well, then pour that over the chicken breasts in your Ziploc bag. Seal that up well and mix the chicken up with the marinade really well. You want to get it really, really well covered. You can marinate this for as little as 30 minutes, but a couple of hours if you've got the time is even better. Turn the chicken in the bag several times to make sure that it's fully coated. While that's marinating, let's make our Nuoc Cham. I like to use like a small mason jar, something like that, because you're going to stir this up, and to me it's just easier to put the lid on and just shake the bejeebers out of it. For the Nuoc Cham, you're going to add 3 tablespoons of fish sauce, 3 tablespoons of lime juice, 1 tablespoon of the rice vinegar, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic. Now, you guys know how I like garlic, so I'm going to make that a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic. And then 1 teaspoon of the chili garlic paste. Now, again, be mindful that if you're not familiar with how spicy the chili garlic paste that you're using is, you might want to even do ½ a teaspoon and stir it up well, taste it, and see what you think. Before you do that, of course, add the final ingredient, and that's a ¼ cup of water. Once you've got that all in your jar, put the lid on and just shake it like there's no tomorrow. Now would be the good time you want to taste that and see if it's spicy enough for you. You just want to be able to taste that chili garlic paste a little bit, so there's just a tiniest bit of heat there. But once you've got it to your liking, you can put that in the fridge along with your chicken as it's marinating. When you're ready to cook your chicken in a heavy skillet that you've warmed over medium heat, you want to add your 2 tablespoons or so of oil, and then lay in your chicken breasts, reserving the marinade. You're going to cook each side 4 to 5 minutes. If you've pounded your chicken nice and flat, this will be plenty of time for it to cook. During the last minute of cooking, you want to pour the marinade over the chicken and turn the breasts to make sure that both sides get coated. After this, you can plate your chicken and it is time to eat. It goes great with some steamed vegetables, and added bonus, the steamed vegetables will probably taste pretty good in the Nuoc Cham dipping sauce. And that is how you make Vietnamese lemon chicken and Nuoc Cham dipping sauce. I hope you will give this a try, and if you do, please let us know how it goes down in the comments. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Just a Cowboy's Lifetime Love. Just a Cowboy's Lifetime Love is the story of Annie Brooks, who, when the story opens, we learn has lost her husband Merle in a very tragic way. At the funeral, she meets some of Merle's former Air Force buddies who have come down from their ranch that they share in Sweetwater, North Dakota. Leading the contingent is Zeke Weaver. who we've met in previous books, of course, along with the other guys. And Zeke wants to help the widow of his friend. Now, the story soon moves to Sweetwater, where a year later, Annie moves in with her mother, who lives in Sweetwater. She soon meets Zeke again, and Annie is having a very difficult time getting through her grief and getting over her husband's death. Zeke, feeling a sense of duty to his friend, wants to help the young widow any way he can. When Annie's mother and the town's matchmakers decide to help out and sends them both and Annie's two young boys on a week-long adventure, is it going to be more than they bargained for? Well, you'll have to come back this Friday to find out. But for now, here is a live reading of Just a Cowboy's Lifetime Love. I hope you enjoy it. Then come back for the full release this Friday here on Say with Jay. Zeke parked his pickup in the church lot and got out. Miller, the only other unmarried man on Briar Ranch, got out from the passenger side. All the other Flyboys who had started the ranch with them now had their own families and went to church with them. Not that Zeke minded. He had no intention of getting married. It was good for other people, but he just wasn't the kind of man a woman wanted to settle down with. He wasn't sure exactly how he'd come to that conclusion or what made him that way, but it was fine by him. He had a nice routine and didn't really care to have it interrupted the way a wife would most definitely interrupt it. "Hey, Smith's over there. I wanted to ask him how his family back home is doing. I'll be back, but you can go on in without me." Miller called across the hood of the truck as he looked down the parking lot at Smith, who had just parked his SUV and was helping his family out. Zeke lifted a hand in acknowledgement and turned toward the church. He stopped short as he saw a familiar figure with a small child on either side of her, walking with Bonnie Fox, Merle's wife. He never had learned her name. It might have been over a year since he'd seen her last, but he felt like he'd recognize her anywhere. His heart hurt. The last time he'd seen her, she looked exhausted, tired, and grieving. She didn't look quite as grief-stricken, but she still looked tired and haggard, like she hadn't been taking care of herself. He swallowed, thinking about Merle and how he would be sad to see his wife had been struggling in the year since he passed. One of the boys stopped on the sidewalk, pulling his mom's hand until she stopped and looked down at him. He pointed over toward a tree and chattered about something, although Zeke was too far away to hear what he was saying. As he went closer, he could see the mom shake her head and tug a little on her son's hand. "Maybe after church we'll have time to go over and see, but not now." "It's a squirrel nest, Mom," he said, peering over again, like he was going to miss the only time in his life that he would ever get to see a squirrel nest if they went to church at that moment. "We don't have time. We need to figure out where your classes are, and then we'll have to make sure we know where we can meet after Sunday school." "I can help you with that, ma'am," Zeke said, watching as her mom disappeared into the church holding the taller boy's hand. The lady's head jerked up, and her eyes widened before they narrowed like she was trying to remember him. Obviously, she didn't remember him, and rightfully so. She'd probably seen hundreds of men on the day of her husband's funeral. It was the biggest funeral he'd ever been to. "I'm Zeke, a friend of your husband's. I saw you at his funeral and the day after." "Oh, that's right, Zeke." She smiled a small smile and held out her hand, clasping his. "I don't think I ever got your name," he said, unsure how to ask for it but wanting to know it. "Annie. I'm sorry.
I'm Annie.
I never thought I'd see you here in Sweetwater.
You live here? She asked, her brows coming down, like her brain was sluggish and catching up, as though it hadn't thought to wonder what in the world he would be doing here in North Dakota of all places.
I do. My buddies and I own the Sweet Briar Dude Ranch that's just outside of town. Your mom had inquired about positions that were open, but I hadn't realized that she was your mom. I guess I should have.
No, there would be no reason for you to do that. Her last name is different, of course.
Her son tugged on her hand, and she gave Zeke an apologetic look before she looked down.
Mom, I think it's a squirrel nest.
I can show you to your classes. I'm one of the hall monitors and know more about Sunday school than a man with no children probably should. She smiled a little bit at that, too, but just one of her soft, small smiles that was gone within a few seconds of crossing her face. He'd like to see her with a big smile or a full-on laugh. She probably had a beautiful laugh. Merle loved to laugh, and he could just imagine this woman smiling at his friend and laughing at his jokes.
Oh, okay, she said, looking back down at her son. This is Braden, and he's 3, and he loves squirrels. All animals, really, but squirrels seem to be a special favorite.
She lifted her shoulder like she wasn't quite sure how he'd gotten attached to squirrels, but he had. I don't think that's a squirrel nest you're looking at, but we can go over and check it out if you want to, Zeke offered. It was for Merle. This woman still looked tired and grief-stricken. He wanted to help her somehow, now that she was in Sweetwater, and apparently looking for a job, because she hadn't denied it. She was basically in his backyard, and he could help. Hi, this is Jay, and thanks for listening. If you're ready for another great audiobook, here's one we think you might like. Or check out the playlist with all our latest releases. Don't forget to subscribe to Say with Jay, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us what you liked in the comments.